Welcome. Welcome to the South Mountain region of Pennsylvania. Today is the first day of spring and it's kind of chilly out here right now, but I'm looking forward to spring, and what I'm really looking forward to is the return of hummingbirds. Hummingbirds will be coming back here in about a month. What I'm going to do today is create a budget hummingbird garden. Now, I live on the South Mountains of Pennsylvania. I'm actually on the north side of the Michaud State Forest, of the South Mountains. So it's really hard for me, for a couple reasons, to create a hummingbird garden. Number one is that we have bedrock just a few inches under the ground. So anytime I create anything like what I'm doing right now, it has to be in raised beds. So you maybe have the same issue. If you don't, maybe I'm thankful that you don't. But this is an issue that we have to deal with, is the rock that's underneath the ground. And so we have to use raised beds when we plant almost anything. The second issue is most hummingbird plants require full sun. And so it's very difficult here on the north side of the South Mountain to find an area that will have enough sunlight to create the environment that we need to have the plants that we need for our hummingbird garden. So I chose this area here, and I do hope that it will work. It's trial and error, so maybe next year I might have to adapt certain things, but for right now, this is the area I chose. It seems like it gets enough sunlight, and so in a few moments I'm going to show how I designed my hummingbird garden, and I do hope that you find it helpful for whatever area that you live in. So all these planters that I have here are just planters that I bought at a major big box store location, and these are about $13 a piece, so that's not a whole lot of money. Now, the way I've set them up here right now is I'm trying to get them level, and once I put dirt into them and I put the mulch around them, I will make them more level. But the purpose is to try to make them level, because if you don't make them level with the sunlight coming over, if they're angled with the ground, they're not going to get the sunlight. The plants are going to be angled, and it's just not going to work. So that's the first key. Number one, be aware of your environment. Be aware of what you need to do to make it work. And in my environment, number one, I need to realize, where do I get sunlight? This is one of the few areas on the north side of the mountain where our home is that I'm going to get enough sunlight to be able to have a hummingbird garden. The second thing is, make sure that you set up your situation to take advantage of where you are. And so if you're in an area on the south side where you get full sun 6 to 8 hours a day, no worries. But where I am, I have to make sure that this is going to work. So one thing I do want to share is that this plan that I'm putting together right now is actually the third plan that I had put together. The reason being is that I will put together something on paper, but then when I actually go out in the real world and try to put it together, it just doesn't work because of elevation differences, because of how the pots fit together, because of where the sunlight's coming from. So just be aware of that. It's important to go ahead and come together and make a plan for how you want your hummingbird garden to be. But at the same point, realize that once you start putting it together like I'm doing right now, you're going to have to make changes, because that's just the way life is. You can put it on paper, but until you actually do it in real life, you're not going to know if it's actually going to work. So let's start putting this together and see how it comes out. So once I have the hummingbird garden the way I want it set up, at least initially, I brought down my giant bucket, because what I'm going to do now is start mixing this soil. And I have some different soil that I bought. I have some of this raised bed soil that I'm going to use. I also have what they call a potting mix. The reason I have both of those is that I have quite a bit of topsoil that I got from a local supplier that has topsoil from the area. Now the topsoil is supposed to be in the ground, so because these are in raised beds, I thought it might be helpful to kind of mix it in with some of the raised bed sources. So we'll see how that works. In a few months, we'll see how the plants like it, but that's what I'm going to do. I have topsoil from a local supplier. I have raised bed gardening soil, and I also have potting soil. I'm going to mix all three together, fill these in, fill the area in the front, and then start planting the seeds. Welcome back to day 2 of creating a budget hummingbird garden. And I just want to highlight 3 items that I have here that are things that you want to take into account no matter what your environment, no matter where you are. 3 items that are essential to a successful hummingbird garden. Number 1 is a water supply. So often when we think about a hummingbird garden, we think of the plants, we think of the nutrition, but they also need a source for water. And so I have a water item here that they can use to be able to get drinks, to be able to wash themselves and so forth. So that's a key item in any hummingbird garden that you design. A second item are the plants. And I've talked earlier about the plants that I have put in here. I'm trying to create an environment that is healthy for hummingbirds as they're here from spring to fall until they migrate back to Mexico and Central America, but they're not up yet. But there is essential because as they come up, it'll nourish them. But that leads me to the third item, and that is supplemental feeders. I put 2 supplemental feeders here. The reason being is that when the hummingbirds first come here, maybe the plants aren't going to be ready for them yet. And so I want to have items here that can help nourish them. So I put 2 feeders up here to not take the place of the native plants that I put in the ground for the hummingbirds, but to augment, to supplement their nutrition. So those are 3 things to think about. Number 1, a water source. Number 2, the plants that you put in, and to try to have them to bloom at different times of the year so you can provide a nutrition for the hummingbirds throughout the entire time that they're here with us. And then number 3, the plants probably aren't always going to be available for the hummingbirds, so to augment that with some feeders. So those are the 3 items that I created here, and we're going to come back together in a few months to see how this all works out. So I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping that the hummingbirds enjoy this environment that I've created for them. I'm hoping that I can get some great pictures to share with you, some great videos, and I look forward to seeing you when they arrive. So here we are now, about 4 months after we first planted the hummingbird garden on the first day of spring. And you can see the result. We have right now anywhere between 12 to 15 hummingbirds that have been staying in the area. Originally, there were, I think, 2 couples, and they decided because of the garden to stay put and to nest. And then once their babies were born, we had a lot more. So we have on any day anywhere between 12 and 15 hummingbirds that are visiting our garden and just enjoying the area. So we're just going to take a moment to just enjoy the fruits of the labor to show what you can do with a hummingbird garden. And it does take time. You have to plan ahead early spring. But you can see the beauty of watching the hummingbirds just enjoy having a garden that is designed specifically for them. And here are a few pictures that I've been able to capture from hummingbirds visiting the hummingbird garden. Thank you for sharing with me this adventure of building a hummingbird garden. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you can use this information to make your own garden. We'll see you next time.